Kate from Bullseye Turning Supply sent me this gorgeous stainless steel fountain pen kit. And I wanted to mate it to a really nice blank. And I have this gorgeous green dyed Burl. Now, I don't know what type of Burl wood that is, but the blank is beautiful. I'm sure it'll lighten up a little bit as I turn it, but I'm getting ready to prepare this, and we are going to turn an Apollo fountain pen kit today. To turn the Apollo kit, you're going to need to start with a blank that is no less than 6 inches in length. You need 2.5 inches minimum for the cap and 3.5 inches minimum for the body. So if you take a look at this set of burls I've got here, I'm at 3 3/4 of an inch for the shorter blank. The longer blank is probably at least another 1/2 inch. So I've got plenty of material to work with. I'm not going to start out by cutting these to length. That would be the normal process from a solid blank, but I'm going to leave these the length they are, and I will trim them to the length I want. I may want the body a little longer than 3.5 inches, and I have another 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch on that, so that'll make for a nice long body. The cap I can cut down to 2.5 inches when I get a little closer to the turning process. I'm going to start with finding the center of both blanks and getting it marked. I like to mark all 4 corners so that I can be sure I find the perfect center, because blanks aren't always perfectly square. And you can see I've got double lines there. We can easily find the center of those double lines with our punch. And we're centered and ready to drill the blank. I've got the body blank in my drill press vise. I've got a 1/4 inch bit chucked up, and we're going to drill 2.8 inches exactly into this blank. Since today I'll be making more than just one blank at a time, I'm going to go ahead and draw a V on this blank. And what this little set of marks will do is I'll be able to remove this from the vise, and then I can place it back into the vise in the same orientation, which means I'll continue to drill straight down through my blank with the other 2 bits that we're going to use on it. Next up, we need to drill 1.825 inches into our burl body blank, and we're going to do that with a 5/16 inch bit. I've got a mark right here so we know when to stop. For the final hole in our body blank, we're going to use a 23/64 inch bit, and I've got it marked at 1 inch depth. I want to get all the dust out of the blank. And I have a section here with the converter, and we're going to test fit to make sure everything fits nicely into the blank. And that's perfect. Let me bring it over to the camera so you can get a better shot at that. Perfect fit. Our cap requires 2 holes, the first of which is 3/8 of an inch, and it's going to be drilled to 1.96 inches depth in the blank. I've changed out my bit for a 29/64 inch diameter bit, and I need to drill 1.25 inches into my blank, then we'll test with the cap insert. It's a bit of a tight fit. I don't want to force it, so what we're going to do is pause, and I'm going to work with this. I may need to go a tiny bit larger on the hole, or I may need to go a tiny bit larger on the 3/8 inch hole in the back of the blank. I don't know yet, so we're going to figure that out, and I'll be back in a minute to tell you what we're going to do to correct this. I hope you'll be able to see that. Take a look at that step down in there where we go from the 29/64 inch bit to the 3/8 inch bit, and notice how large the footing is there. As we rotate the blank, notice how narrow it is. What that means is when I chased the 3/8 inch hole with the 29/64, I did not have it perfectly centered in the blank. So as this insert goes into the blank, when this gets to the bottom, it gets forced to one side, and it's causing me not to have a good fit. What I'm going to do is we will ream out the hole just a tiny bit at the bottom. Maybe we'll go to the next size up from 3/8. We'll clean it up a tiny bit. That ought to allow us to glue it in. We'll use plenty of epoxy, and I believe we should be okay. I've jumped up to a 25/64 inch bit, and I've marked it at 1.96 inches. We're going to go ahead and chase that bottom hole to this depth. and then we're going to refit our insert. She's going to go down in there. I don't want to force her all the way in because I have to get it out to put the epoxy. It's still going to provide a tight fit, and I'll be able to unthread the cap from the body, no problem. A comment I want to make to you guys, which will make your turning these Apollos much more successful, is before you start drilling, perfectly square your blank, then square the face to the blank, then drill your hole. That way you don't have to square the surface after you've already drilled the hole, which becomes tricky. What I've done is I've put my live center into the hole, and then I've used a spur center here to grip the other end of the blank, and I've looked at the edge of the blank and lined it up with the ways of the lathe, so it looks like it's spinning fairly true. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the blank around. We're going to true it to where I can grab it. You can see how it's kind of off. I didn't drill perfectly down the center, so I expected that. But we're going to go ahead and true this blank, and then I'll grip it in another chuck and face the end of it off with a parting tool. I also think truing the blanks this way will help you with the final turning, because when you put a plastic insert into this blank and you attach it to a mandrel and turn it, if you've got all of those corners on the blank that you're trying to turn away, it puts a lot of torque on the mandrel and it can strip out that plastic insert. By having it trued up ahead of time, basically I'm just finishing, so it should make a huge difference at that point in the turning as well. Let me get it off the lathe and see how we did. It's not too bad. I mean, it looks fairly symmetrical. What I want to do now is get the body blank trued the same way, and then we'll get these into a chuck, a collet chuck, to where we can perfectly square the ends of each of them. Still got a little bit of the surface there, but I don't think that'll hurt anything. Let's get this out of the lathe and see what it looks like. That looks pretty good. All right, let me find a collet chuck. I'm going to actually clean up the end of this, probably just, on the disc sander. I'll just round it over just a tiny bit because we'll be turning it round anyway, so I can grip it in a collet chuck, and then we're going to square the face where the components are inserted and where the cap and the body are going to meet. I found that the 5/8" spring collet fit this body blank nicely, and if you look at the end, you can kind of see how uneven it really is. I'm going to get the lathe started, and we're just going to clean that up. All right, that looks pretty good. Let me grab a little piece of sandpaper and touch it up. That looks really nice. You can see the other end. This is where I took it over to my disc sander, and I just laid it against the disc at an angle and rotated it with light pressure just to kind of clean that little lip off of there where I couldn't get right up next to my drive center. But the body blank is looking great, and this will be so much easier for me to turn once I get it onto the mandrel. Let me get the cap blank. We're going to do the same process, and then we'll get the components glued in. I'm just hand tightening these in the collet. I don't want to put a lot of pressure because I don't want to crush the blank since it is hollow, and because I'm using a carbide tool that's very sharp, I'm not having any issue with the blank wanting to move in the chuck. You can see I cleaned that end up the same as I did the body. And there is the component end. With the components dry fitted into the blanks, you can see that we have a bit of a gap. These two blanks should meet. This is why we need to make sure we're squaring our blanks before we're drilling. We won't have this problem if we do. This is not an issue. We'll put these back in our vise and we'll just drill a tiny bit further into each of the blanks so that they close that gap up, and we will be ready to glue. Instead of applying epoxy to the components, I've decided to apply it to the inside of the blanks. And the idea is I should have less of a possibility of getting epoxy on the outside surface, which would cause the two blanks to adhere together. Putting a liberal amount in there. Okay, now we'll slide our component in. Grab our cap. Okay. Beautiful. Got a nice fit there. We're going to set this aside, let it dry, and we're ready for turning tomorrow. Look at the finish we've got on that blank. I sand it to 600 and it is gorgeous. It's ready to be cleaned with denatured alcohol and have a CA finish put on it. But let me stop and talk a little bit. You noticed I was using a foam-backed pad on my hand drill, and it had hook and loop sandpaper discs. There are pros and cons to doing that. One of the pros is because it's in an orbital motion, you never get centrifugal scratches, and then I don't have to sand with the grain to get rid of those scratches and then worry about the end-to-end scratches. It just doesn't put them because it's doing a centrifugal motion. That's a pro. A con is it removes a lot of material at one time, especially when those pads are brand new. So that's something, if you decide to use those, I will sand by hand on most of my pins. But like I said, when I'm in a hurry, I do switch to something that's a little more convenient. And it eats a lot of material fast. So you're going to have a very light touch. Be very careful, because the other thing you'll do is you'll dig in, you'll dish areas out. And I don't have that because I've gotten used to using it. But you don't want to start using that on a really important pin. If you're going to try using the hook and loop sandpaper with your drill, I recommend just taking a block of material, maybe maple, walnut, whatever, turning it round, sanding it, then turning it again to rough it back up, sand it, turn it again, sand it, and so on until you get comfortable and proficient with the tool. Other than that, what I'm going to do is apply a little bit of crystal clear paste wax to my mandrel. I'm going to put the blank back on, and then we are going to CA the blank. We're also going to apply crystal clear paste wax to the threads of this because I don't want to get it all gunked up with CA. I want to be real careful not to get that on the blank because the CA won't stick. So any finger that I use to put it on with, I won't touch the blank with after I've put the wax on. There's a sneak peek at what this blank is going to look like. It's going to be gorgeous. There's your first coat of CA. Take a look at what it did to that blank. Man, that's beautiful. I'm going to come back and show it to you once I get all of the coats applied. We've got 5 coats of thin and 5 coats of medium. Looking the blank over, it looks really nice. The only thing I'm concerned about is I've got to make sure that I don't have CA that rolled over the end of the blank onto this component. Now, I got the wax to protect it, so I think what I'll do is after I micromesh this, I may come in with my parting tool and just clean that up just very slightly. We'll take a look at it under the magnifying glass to see if we need to do that. I'm going to now micromesh this blank, and I'll come back and show it to you when it's complete. Micromesh is complete. I cannot wait to get this on the buffing wheels. This blank is just amazing, and it is going to pop so well whenever it gets a little bit of buffing done to it. Take a look at that, fresh from the buffing wheels. Just look at that shine. I do not remember where I got this burl. I received 2 pieces of it from a viewer. This has been many, many years back. If you happen to be the viewer who sent me this burl and the red burl that I used on the other Apollo I did a couple of pins back, contact me. I would love to buy some of this from you. This is some of the most beautiful wood I've ever turned, and I would love to buy some from you, and I would love to promote your shop so that other people can buy it from you as well. I'm taking a look down here, and everything looks really good. I don't know if I'm going to use my parting tool or not. I think I'm going to wait till I get the cap turned, and then I'm going to fit the 2 components together. And if we have a tight fit, we're going to call it good. If we don't, we can always put this back on the mandrel and clean up that surface. It doesn't look bad to me, just taking a quick peek at it, though. Let's move on and get our cap turned. You can see I've made a mark. 1.96 is somewhere about here, just roughly estimating. So I gave myself a little bit of extra. We're gonna go ahead and part this off and sand and shape. Clean that little nub up, and we'll be ready to sand. Here's the new cap length, and I'll put that onto my pin. As you can see, that is a much more symmetrical looking pin. I like that a lot better. I'm gonna go ahead now, get this back onto my mandrel. Actually, we'll put a little bit of wax on the mandrel first, then we'll get this on the mandrel and we'll clean it with some denatured alcohol, and we'll go ahead and apply our CA finish. Let's wipe this blank off with a little denatured alcohol. It'll kind of give you a peek at what it's gonna look like. It's gonna be awesome. I've waxed my bushing with a little crystal clear paste wax, and I'm ready to apply some thin CA to the blank. Take a look at that. Wow. I'll come back and show you the blank once I get all of my CA finish on it, right before we're ready to micromesh. This is going to be a beauty. The blank looks incredible. It's got 5 coats of thin, 5 coats of medium, and we are ready to micromesh. I'm really happy with how this turned out. Let's get a little Renaissance wax on here and get her over to the buffing wheels. I'd like to introduce you to my new Apollo fountain pen kit. It is dressed with a gorgeous green burl. I'm absolutely loving the wood and the pattern in the grain. It comes with a Schmidt nib and a Schmidt converter. This is going to be my brand new everyday carry. I'd like to thank you for joining me in the shop today. I love these Apollo pen kits. Now, I'm going to tell you straight up, they are not as simple as a kit pen. These take a few more tools and they take a lot more patience. They are a much bigger challenge than a kit pen. But if you're thinking about at some point moving into the bespoke artisan kitless pen arena, this is a really great gateway. These pens are as close as you can get to kitless without buying all of the crazy tools and really getting into making bespoke artisan kitless pens. I want to thank Kate over at Bullseye Turning Supply for sending me this pen, and several others, which you'll see in upcoming videos. And I love it so much that this is going to become my everyday carry. I've been wanting to carry a fountain pen again. I did for a while and I got away from it, but this one's going to be in my pocket, I think, next week when I head to work. Everybody, thank you for hanging out with me. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. I want you to know that you are always welcome in my shop. Come back and see me again real soon, and have a great evening.